In this video, I'm going to be comparing Thor and God of War versus Thor in Norse mythology. And oh, do I have a surprise for you today. To help me with this fucking awesome video today is the one, the only, Defukas.
Mr. Static, thanks for having me on board, and hello God of War Nation. My name's Defukas, or Fuchs for short, and you may already know me as a fellow God of War content creator alongside our friend Shane here. Any chance to help spread the love for these games in other places is always a pleasure. So thank you all again for having me. Anywho, we got us a big old boy to discuss.
So Thor is one of the most anticipated characters that we're going to see in God of War Ragnarok because at this time, God of War Ragnarok has not been released yet. There are a few differences between the Thor that we come to learn about in the God of War series and the God of Thunder himself from Norse mythology. So first off, let's start with his appearance.
So here's the concept art for Thor in God of War Ragnarok. First off, Thor is a pretty well built bundle of thickness. Alright, so when I first saw this picture, this is not really the way that we imagined Sony Santa Monica was going to approach the appearance of Thor. You would think that he would be more like a Norse John Cena, but you know what? This is okay. Some people could say this is the way he was always going to look, and there's a lot of evidence to actually back that up. In game, we learned from Ymir that Thor is quite the drinker and is very gluttonous, so it would actually make sense if he had a little bit of a beer belly on him. I mean, it really does make sense to me, and I personally love the way Thor looks because he's just this mean asshole, and the way he looks matches his personality and the character description quite well. The only actual problem that there is to be had with this look is his armor, because, it's not covering anything. His heart, his lungs, his nips, none of it's covered, but you know what? He might like to live recklessly. Yeah, let's wear armor that only covers our shoulders. It makes sense, right?
So now moving on to Thor in Norse mythology, there actually isn't many references to his physical appearance. There are actually only 2 references that I could actually come up with. One comes from chapter 8 of the epic poem Thrymskida, I hope I'm halfway pronouncing that right, and is also mentioned in Eric the Red Saga, but they are very small mentions. In Thrymskida, he is actually mentioned to have a beard. Okay, we're off to a good start. But there is actually not much more information than that. Now in Eric the Red Saga, he is actually mentioned as Old Redbeard. So obviously Thor is a ginger, which actually matches his Sony Santa Monica's depiction of Thor pretty well. Ginger in a beard. Nailed it. But to the ancient Scandinavians, Thor never really had a physical appearance because he actually represented an energy that was out and about in the world. Thor was given more of a physical description as the years went on because he was worshipped by humans, so he was given human appearance. So if he was worshipped by horses, he would have more of a horse description. Actually, the YouTuber Norse Magic and Beliefs actually explains it extremely well, so link to his video right here and also in the description down below. Tell him I sent you. So now, let's dive into some boat stories that we hear from Ymir during our journeys with Kratos and Atreus. Obviously, about Thor.
So there is a particular story about the Jotun king Thrym and God of War. Thrym stole Thors Hammer Mjolnir while Thor was asleep, and then hightailed it on back to Jotunheim and said he'd only give it back to him if Freya would marry him. See, MCU fans, the whole worthy thing is just a comic book thing and has nothing to do with Norse mythology or God of War. Sorry. Anyway, Odin saw this as a pretty great opportunity to, kill some giants, and made Freya conceal Thor magically to hide him during the ceremony. So when Thrym finally brought Mjolnir out to Freya to consecrate their wedding vows, Thor jumped out, grabbed his hammer, and cracked the skull of every giant in that room. And Freya, being the kind-hearted soul that she is, decided to cast Thor and herself out of Jotunheim before too much damage could be done.
Okay, I love the Norse mythology version of this story, and it's absolutely hilarious. Listen to this. So, pretty much starts the same. Thrym steals Mjolnir while Thor is asleep and would not give it back unless Freya would marry him. Okay, so far so good, matches up with God of War pretty well. But here's where it gets a little different. So instead of Freya going to Jotunheim for a fake wedding, it's actually Thor dressing up in a wedding dress, going to Jotunheim pretending to be Freya. Yep, Thor is in a wedding gown, and Loki is actually going with him dressed up as a handmaiden. And he got so much from the other gods. Now, there are a few contradictions between the mythologies. So, one says Freya casts a Vanir spell over Thor and Loki to make him look different. One says Loki casts the spell over himself and Thor. And one says basically Thrym is completely blind, so he couldn't see anyway. But everyone else in Jotunheim would see Thor in a wedding dress, so I don't know how that would have worked. But anyway, but the best part of the story is when Loki and Thor are at the ceremony right before it, and Loki's just sitting there picking at Thor, who was pissed. So Thor's just sitting there, just basically being Thor, just eating and drinking like a complete animal. And Thrym kind of notices this, and it's like, wow, you have such an appetite and a thirst. And Loki chimes in and goes, she just hasn't eaten in 9 days because she's been so nervous about this. And more, he's just constantly just picking at Thor, and Thor just getting even more pissed by the second. I love Loki. But at the end of the ceremony, it's basically the same. Mjolnir is produced, and Thor just wreaks havoc on everybody, and just basically kills everybody. Except for Loki. Probably wanted to, though. And yes, that's by far my favorite Thor story. What's yours?
So the personalities of Thor and God of War and Thor in Norse mythology are actually not that different from one another. In many stories shared between classic mythology and God of War, Thor's a great warrior and a party-going drinker/glutton with a massive temper. So why does this matter? Well, it matters because both of these stories are told from different angles and perspectives in regards to Thor. In mythology, Thor is the savior and protector of the people in Midgard. And in God of War, he's basically the same, but with zero redeeming qualities so far. I mean, hey, he's good at killing.
Okay, right quick. The translation giant from Jotun is a completely translation. Whoever did that needs to be fired. Jotun, when translated, actually means devourer. They actually represent the chaos and cause destruction throughout the world. Thor is the protector from these things, the destroyer of the devourers that cause destruction for the people in Midgard. So from this perspective, Thor is an amazing hero. But if you turn it around and look at him through the perspective of the Jotun, the devourers, he is a complete monster. He is the red-bearded boogeyman that hides under Jotun's bed, causes him to scream out in the night. Thor is the god that would take the Jotun's lives at the drop of a hat, and this is the perspective that God of War has taken. And hey, no hate here, God of War is an amazing game, created by the amazing team over at Sony Santa Monica, and the story is absolutely amazing as well. Amazing. But just from that turn of the perspective, Thor can look either like a hero to the people in Midgard, or he can look like a complete monster from the perspective of the Jotun. Even his hammer Mjolnir has different symbolism. From the Jotun's perspective, it is like the nuclear bomb, the thing of mass destruction. But on the other side, from the humans mostly in Midgard, it actually represents protection and the representation of the heartbeat. So is Thor this giant killing machine, or is he the hero and protector of Midgard? Tell me what you think in the comments down below. And if you haven't checked out Defuka's amazing content as well, links are going to be in the description down below and actually right here as well. My name is Shane Static, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.